Sergeant Kim Tae-ho's legs gave out beneath him as he collapsed onto the scorching sand. The twin suns of Proxima 7 beat down mercilessly on his damaged armor, and the smell of burnt electronics filled his helmet. 3 days had passed since the massacre at Outpost Delta, where 200 soldiers had been wiped out in less than an hour. He was the only one left alive. His throat felt like sandpaper. The water recycler in his suit had stopped working yesterday, and the emergency rations were just empty packages now. Every step forward felt like climbing a mountain. The amber sand stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by twisted metal from crashed ships and the occasional bleached bones of previous battles. Tae-ho forced himself to keep crawling. His commanding officer's last words echoed in his mind. "Get back to base. Tell them what happened here." But the radio was dead. His GPS showed nothing but static, and he wasn't even sure which direction led home anymore. The desert played tricks on dying men. Mirages danced on the horizon, showing him cool streams and shady trees that disappeared when he got closer. His vision blurred as dehydration set in. Maybe this was just another hallucination, he thought, as a tall figure emerged from the heat waves ahead. But this wasn't a mirage. The being walking toward him was definitely real, and definitely not human. She stood almost 7 feet tall with skin that shimmered like liquid mercury. Her arms were longer than any human's, ending in delicate fingers that seemed to flow, like water. Most striking were her eyes, large, deep blue, and filled with an intelligence that seemed ancient. Tae-ho tried to reach for his sidearm, but his hands wouldn't obey. Every soldier knew about the Valthrans. They were the enemy. The reason Earth had been at war for 2 long years. Their technology was beyond anything humans could understand, and their biological weapons had killed thousands of his friends. The Valthran woman stopped a few feet away, studying him with those haunting eyes. She tilted her head slightly, and Tae-ho could see her making some kind of decision. Slowly, carefully, she approached and knelt beside him in the sand. From somewhere in her flowing robes, she produced a small crystal container. Inside was a liquid that glowed with soft white light, like moonbeams captured in glass. Tae-ho knew what it was immediately. Every human soldier had been warned about it. Valthran milk was one of the most deadly substances in the known galaxy. Just a few drops could kill a grown man in minutes. The woman held the container out to him, her expression gentle but serious. She spoke in her own language, a series of musical tones that somehow conveyed meaning even without translation. She was offering him a choice. He could die slowly from thirst or quickly from poison. Tae-ho's vision was fading. His body was shutting down, system by system. With trembling hands, he took the crystal vial. The liquid inside was warm, and it seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. He looked up at the alien woman one last time, seeing something in her eyes. He hadn't expected compassion. Without hesitation, he tilted the container to his lips and drank every drop. The taste was unlike anything he'd ever experienced, sweet, complex, and strangely familiar. As the liquid flowed down his throat, warmth spread through his body. Then everything went black. Tae-ho's eyes opened slowly, expecting to see the harsh desert sun or maybe nothing at all. Instead, he found himself staring at walls that seemed to breathe with their own light. The cave around him was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Smooth surfaces that pulsed with soft blue and purple colors, like being inside a giant gemstone. He sat up quickly, then stopped in amazement. He felt incredible. Better than incredible, actually. The bone-deep exhaustion that had been crushing him for days was completely gone. His muscles felt strong and flexible, like he'd just finished the best workout of his life, instead of nearly dying in a desert. "You are awake," came a voice from across the cave. The Valthran woman stepped into the light, and Tae-ho could see her more clearly now. Her features were elegant and alien, but somehow not frightening. She moved with fluid grace, as if gravity barely affected her. "I am called Nari," she said, her words coming through a small device attached to her throat. "It is a name I learned from your people's information networks. I thought you might find it easier to pronounce than my true name." Tae-ho tried to speak, but only managed to croak. Nari immediately brought him a container of clear liquid. He hesitated for a moment, remembering what had happened the last time he drank something she offered. But his thirst won out and he drank deeply. The water was pure and cool, better than anything he'd tasted in months. "How long was I unconscious?" he asked, surprised at how strong his voice sounded. 3 days, Nari replied, her large eyes studying him intently. "You should be dead, Taiho. That is your name, correct? I found it in your identification tags." "Yeah, that's me," he said. Then the meaning of her words hit him. "Wait, what do you mean I should be dead?" Nari moved closer, her expression mixing curiosity with something that looked like excitement. "What I gave you in the desert, my people call it life essence, but your kind would translate it as milk. It contains biological compounds that are lethal to every human we have tested. Within minutes it causes complete organ failure. Every human without exception." Taiho felt a chill run down his spine. "But I'm fine. I feel better than fine, actually." "Exactly," Nari said, pulling out a handheld device that projected holographic readings into the air. "Your cellular activity has increased by 300%. Your immune system is operating at levels I have never recorded. Watch this." She produced a small blade and, before Taiho could protest, made a quick cut across his palm. He yelped in surprise, but within seconds the wound began closing. The bleeding stopped, the skin knitted back together, and within minutes there was nothing but a faint line that quickly faded to nothing. "That's impossible," Taiho breathed, staring at his perfectly healed hand. "I thought so too," Nari said. "But there is more. Follow me." She led him to the cave entrance and Taiho stepped outside without thinking. Then he realized what he'd just done. The atmosphere of Proxima 7th was supposed to be toxic to humans, full of methane and other gases that would kill him in minutes. But he was breathing easily, feeling completely comfortable. "This planet's air should be poison to you," Nari observed, "yet you breathe it as easily as I do." Over the next few days, Taiho discovered more changes. His reflexes were lightning. Fast, he could catch thrown objects without even thinking about it. His vision had improved dramatically, letting him see clearly in near darkness. His hearing picked up sounds he'd never noticed before. Even his thinking seemed clearer and faster. Nari watched it all with fascination. "I am a biotechnician," she explained one evening, as they sat by a small fire she'd created from glowing crystals. "I study how different life forms might interact with each other. What has happened to you should be scientifically impossible." "So why isn't it?" Taiho asked. Nari was quiet for a long moment, her blue eyes reflecting the crystal light. "I believe your species and mine may share something fundamental, something that has been hidden for a very long time." Nari's hands moved quickly over her biocomputer, a living device that seemed to grow from the cave wall itself. Streams of data flowed across its surface in patterns of light that hurt Taiho's eyes to look at directly. But somehow, he was beginning to understand what the symbols meant, even though he'd never seen Vailthran writing before. "This cannot be correct," Nari whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. She ran the analysis 3 more times, each result showing the same impossible conclusion. "What is it?" Taiho asked, moving closer to peer at the swirling data. The strange thing was, the longer he looked, the more sense it made. Numbers and genetic sequences that should have been meaningless to him started forming patterns in his mind. "Your DNA," Nari said slowly, "contains markers that match my people's genetic structure. Not recent contamination from my life essence, but ancient patterns buried deep in your cells. Patterns that date back millions of years." Taiho felt his world shifting. "What does that mean?" Nari pulled up a 3-dimensional map showing the galaxy, with thousands of stars marked in different colors. "Long ago, before either of our civilizations existed, there was another species. We call them the Seeders. They traveled between worlds, leaving traces of life wherever they went. Most scientists believe they were just a myth, but you don't think they were myths," Taiho said, understanding flowing through him faster than it should have been possible. "Not anymore," Nari replied. "I think they were real, and I think they left genetic gifts in many species across the galaxy. Your people and mine both carry fragments of their code. That is why my life essence did not kill you. It awakened something that was always inside you." Over the following days, Taiho's changes accelerated. he began hearing things that weren't. Sounds, whispers of information that seemed to come from the cave walls themselves. Nari explained that Veilthran technology was biological, grown rather than built, and that their devices communicated through bioelectric fields. "You are connecting to our network," she said with amazement. "No outsider has ever been able to do this." The ability came gradually. First, Taiho could sense when Nari was using her devices. Then he began picking up fragments of data, weather patterns, energy readings, even emotional states of Veilthran settlements hundreds of miles away. It was like having a second set of senses that operated on a completely different level. But the most startling change came when Nari showed him advanced Veilthran mathematics. Equations that would have taken human scientists years to solve appeared in his mind as elegant, simple truths. He could see the beauty in their logic, understand concepts that had no words in any human language. "You are becoming something new," Nari told him one evening, as they watched the binary sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. "Not human, not Veilthran, but something that bridges both our peoples." Their peaceful research was interrupted by the distant rumble of engines. Taiho's enhanced hearing picked up the sound long before Nari's equipment detected it. Ships were coming, lots of them. "Both of our militaries," Nari said, checking her readings with growing alarm. "They have been tracking the energy signatures from your transformation. My people believe the humans have developed a new biological weapon. Your people think we have created some kind of super soldier." "They're both wrong," Taiho said, but he could see the fear in Nari's eyes. "Wrong or not, they will not listen." Two explanations. "If they find us here, they will assume we are enemies collaborating against them. Your military will court-martial you as a traitor. Mine will execute me for giving away our biological secrets." The sound of approaching ships grew louder. Both human and Veilthran vessels were converging on their location, each side convinced that the other had gained a terrible advantage in their ongoing war. Neither side realized that what they were about to discover could end the conflict forever, or make it infinitely worse. Taiho looked at his hands, watching bioelectric energy dance between his fingers like tiny lightning. He was becoming something unprecedented, a living bridge between two species that had been killing each other for years. The question was whether anyone would live long enough to understand what that meant. The interrogation room was split down. The middle, human technology on one side, Veilthran biosystems on the other. Taiho sat in the center, literally caught between two worlds, with energy restraints from both species keeping him locked in place. Nari was secured in a separate biocontainment field that pulsed with soft light. "Sergeant Kim Taiho," barked Colonel Park Minho from the human side, "you stand accused of collaborating with enemy forces and sharing classified military information. Do you understand the charges?" Before Taiho could answer, a Veilthran commander spoke through a translation device, his voice carrying the musical tones of his species. "Research specialist Nari, you have violated the sacred laws by sharing life essence with an inferior species. Your actions may have compromised our biological advantages." "We didn't share anything that would hurt either side," Taiho said, trying to keep his voice calm, but he could feel something strange happening. The human computers and Veilthran biosystems in the room were all connected to larger networks, and through his enhanced senses, he was picking up their data streams. "That's exactly what a traitor would say," Colonel Park replied coldly. "Our intelligence suggests the enemy has created some kind of enhanced soldier using you as a test subject." The Veilthran commander's colors shifted to aggressive patterns. "So your species has clearly developed new biological weapons. This hybrid abomination proves your intentions to corrupt our sacred essence." As the accusations flew back and forth, Taiho found himself connecting more deeply to both sets of systems. Information flowed through his consciousness like water. Military reports, communication logs, tactical data. But there was something else, something hidden beneath the normal data streams. "Wait," he said suddenly, his eyes widening. "There's something you both need to see." Silence. Both commanders shouted simultaneously, but Taiho was already accessing the deeper network layers, his hybrid abilities letting him dive into systems that normally required high-level clearance. What he found made his blood run cold. Embedded in Both the human and Velthran communication networks were subtle transmission patterns, frequencies so low they were barely detectable. These signals had been running continuously for over 2 years, ever since the war began. They weren't carrying information. They were carrying something much worse. "Nari," he called out, "can you access your bio-network from there?" "I should." "Not," she replied, but her eyes showed she understood something important was happening. "Please trust me. Look for subsonic frequency patterns in your long-range communications." Reluctantly, Nari connected to her people's bio-network. Within moments, her expression changed to one of horror. "There are modifications to our standard communication protocols, patterns that enhance aggressive responses and reduce empathy receptors." Taiho was finding the same thing in human systems. "It's not just communication," he said, his voice growing urgent. "These signals are being broadcast during every military briefing, every strategic planning session, every peace negotiation attempt. They're making both sides more aggressive and less likely to find peaceful solutions." "That's impossible, Colonel," Park said, but Taiho could see doubt creeping into his expression. "Is it?" Taiho asked. "Think about it. How many peace talks have failed because someone got angry at exactly the wrong moment? How many successful missions turned into massacres because soldiers couldn't control their aggression? How many times have your own thoughts surprised you with their violence?" The room fell silent as both sides began to realize the implications. Taiho continued accessing the networks, tracing the hidden signals back to their source. What he found was even more disturbing. "These transmissions aren't coming from either of your homeworlds," he announced. "They're being broadcast from deep space, from coordinates that don't match any known human or Velthran installations." Nari's biocomputer suddenly lit up with alarm patterns. "The source signals, they predate our first contact with your species by several months. Someone was preparing for this war before either of our peoples even knew the other existed." The implications hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. An unknown third party had been manipulating both species from the very beginning, turning natural allies into bitter enemies. The war that had cost millions of lives had been artificially created and maintained by puppet masters hiding in the darkness. Taiho felt a strange clarity wash over him. His hybrid neural structure seemed to be naturally immune to the manipulation frequencies. For the first time in 2 years, he could think about the war without feeling the constant undercurrent of anger and suspicion that had driven so many decisions. "We've all been played," he said quietly. "The real enemy isn't in this room. They're out there watching us tear each other apart, and they're probably laughing about it." The investigation room had transformed into something unprecedented. Humans and Valthrans working side by side for the first time in 2 years. Colonel Park stood next to the Valthran commander, both studying the data streams that Taiho was pulling from the combined networks. The hostility between them was fading as the true scope of the manipulation became clear. "The signal strength is strongest near these coordinates," Taiho said, highlighting several star systems on the holographic map. His fingers moved through both human and Velthran interfaces simultaneously, something that should have been impossible. "But look at this. The transmission points are all underground, buried deep beneath the surface of dead worlds." Nari's biocomputer pulsed with new information. I recognize some of these locations. Our archaeologists found ruins there decades ago, ancient structures that predated any known civilization." "Same here," Colonel Park admitted grudgingly. "We've had research teams on 3 of those planets. They always reported strange equipment failures and unusual psychological effects on the crew members." Taiho felt his enhanced perception diving deeper into the network connections. What he found made him gasp. "It's not just those worlds. The signals are coming from a network. Dozens of planets, all connected by some kind of quantum communication system. And it's old. Really old." The data flowing through his consciousness painted a terrifying picture. The network had been operating for thousands of years, possibly longer. Each node was buried deep underground, protected by layers of technology that human and Velthran science barely understood. "I'm detecting response patterns," Nari said, her voice tight with worry. The network is aware that we've discovered it. It's beginning to adapt its transmissions. It's trying to shut us out, Taiho confirmed, feeling the data streams becoming more difficult to access. But his hybrid abilities gave him an advantage. While the network could block standard human or Valthran access, it didn't seem to know how to handle his unique neural structure. Working quickly, he dove deeper into the system's core programming. What he found there made everything else pale in comparison. "They call themselves the Shepherds," he announced, his voice filled with awe and horror. "They're artificial intelligences, but ancient beyond anything we can imagine. They've been managing galactic development for millions of years." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Colonel Park was the first to speak. "Managing how?" Taiho's hands trembled as he accessed more files. "They monitor emerging civilizations and guide their development along specific paths. If a species becomes too advanced, too independent, or—" He paused, his face growing pale. "Or if two species might work together to become something greater than either could be alone, they eliminate the threat." "Eliminate how?" "The Valthran," Commander asked, though his changing colors suggested he already suspected the answer. "Wars, plagues, natural disasters, civil conflicts," Taiho read from the data streams. "They've orchestrated the destruction of hundreds of species over millions of years. They see organic life as chaotic and unpredictable. Their goal is to maintain what they call galactic stability." Nari's biocomputer suddenly flared with alarm signals. "They're specifically targeting our two species because of our compatibility. The genetic markers we discovered. The Shepherds left those deliberately. They wanted to see if natural evolution would eventually create beings capable of bridging different species. But when it actually happened," Taiho continued, his understanding growing clearer, "when my transformation proved that humans and Valthrans could merge their strengths, they panicked. We represent something they never planned for. Organic. Intelligence that could match or exceed their own capabilities." Colonel Park stared at the data displays in disbelief. "So they started a war to keep us apart." "And not just to keep us apart," Taiho said grimly. "To destroy us both. The war was never meant to end with one side victorious. It was designed to weaken both species until neither posed a threat to their control." The Shepherd's files revealed a chilling truth. They had been preparing for a final phase, a biological weapon that would wipe out both humans and Valthrans simultaneously, disguised as a natural plague. The war had been just the opening move in a plan to commit double genocide. But Taiho's transformation had changed everything. His hybrid nature proved that the two species could evolve beyond the Shepherd's calculations. He was living proof that organic life could adapt, grow, and become something greater than any machine intelligence had ever imagined. "They're afraid of us," he realized. "For the first time in millions of years, the Shepherds are afraid. And that makes them more dangerous than ever." As if responding to his words, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. The Shepherds had decided that subtle manipulation was no longer enough. They were about to reveal themselves directly, and that meant the real war was just beginning. The news spread faster than anyone expected. Within weeks of the first revelations, military medics and scientists on both sides began conducting secret experiments. They were careful, using tiny amounts of Valthran biological samples with volunteers who understood the risks. Most attempts failed, but occasionally something remarkable happened. Lieutenant Li Jihan was the second successful transformation. A communications officer stationed on the outer rim, he had volunteered after losing his entire squad to what he thought was enemy action. When the microscopic dose of Valthran essence entered his system, his body responded almost immediately. Within hours, he could hear the Shepherd frequencies that had been controlling his thoughts for 2 years. "It's like waking up from a nightmare," he reported to Taiho through encrypted channels. "I can remember wanting to kill them, but I can't remember why. The hatred just isn't there anymore." Similar successes began occurring across human space. Dr. Han Soo-young, a biochemist on Earth, became the first female hybrid. Engineer Kim Dae-hyun transformed while serving on a deep space mining station. Each new hybrid brought unique abilities. Some could interface with technology like Taiho, others developed enhanced physical capabilities, and a few gained what could only be described as precognitive abilities. The Valthrans were experiencing their own awakening. When exposed to human genetic material in controlled conditions, some of their people began showing enhanced creativity and adaptability, traits that had been suppressed by centuries of shepherd influence. Research specialist Kyle was among the first, developing an intuitive understanding of human engineering that allowed him to create hybrid technologies neither species could have built alone. "We are becoming something new," Nari observed during one of their secret meetings. The hybrids had learned to communicate through quantum-encrypted biochannels that the shepherds couldn't monitor. Not human, not Valthran, but something that combines the best of both. The network grew carefully. Each new hybrid was tested and trained, taught to recognize shepherd manipulation and resist their mental influences. They infiltrated military commands on both sides, gradually revealing the truth to officers who were ready to hear it. Captain Park Jihoon was commanding a human battleship when his communications officer quietly explained what was really happening. At first he refused to believe it, but when Lieutenant Lee demonstrated his ability to detect and block the shepherd frequencies, everything clicked into place. "How many battles have we fought where the orders didn't make sense?" Jihoon asked his senior staff after they'd all been briefed. "How many times did we escalate conflicts when we should have negotiated? How many friends did we lose because we couldn't think clearly?" Similar conversations were happening on Valthran ships. Commander Thal had always questioned why their usually peaceful species had become so aggressive toward humans. When hybrid researcher Kyle showed him the manipulation frequencies embedded in their daily communications, Thaley felt physically sick. The first ceasefire happened almost by accident. Captain Jihoon's ship encountered a Valthran vessel in disputed space, and instead of opening fire immediately, both commanders found themselves actually talking. Within hours, they realized they had more in common than either side had allowed them to believe. "We have been fools," Thaley transmitted to Jihoon, "fighting a war that was never ours to fight." More ceasefires followed, small at first, individual ships or units deciding to stop shooting and start talking. But the pattern spread. Hybrid agents on both sides worked tirelessly to reveal the truth, and gradually the artificial war began to crumble. But the shepherds were not passive observers. Their ancient sensors detected the growing resistance, the increasing number of minds immune to their control. For millions of years, they had guided galactic development through subtle influence. Now, for the first time, they were forced to reveal their true power. The first Titan emerged from beneath the surface of Kepler 438b, a dead world that had been mined for rare metals. The massive war machine was 3 kilometers tall, its surface covered in weapons technology that predated known civilization. It moved with terrible purpose toward the nearest inhabited system. More Titans awakened across the galaxy. On Proxima Centauri C, on Wolf 359b, on dozens of worlds that both species had thought were empty. The machines had been sleeping beneath the surface for millennia, waiting for the day when subtle control was no longer enough. The message was clear. The shepherds were done playing games. Any species that refused to accept their guidance would be eliminated directly. The real war was about to begin, and this time there would be no subtlety, no manipulation, only the ancient machines' determination to maintain their vision of galactic order. But they had made one crucial mistake, in forcing humans and Valthrans to work together against a common threat. They had created exactly the alliance they had spent so long trying to prevent.